Hello and welcome to Stand Up. I've got a great guest as always, and he's one of the funniest, smartest, most favorite guests on the show. Today, it's Wajahat Ali back joining me. Lots to talk about with him. My conversation with Waj begins at 22 minutes. But every day I give you the headlines and some sound clips, and of course I can't do any of it without you. This is an independent media venture. I do not have ads. It is fully funded by you. Cannot do it without you. If you're not a subscriber, join us right now. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Join our amazing community of generous, thoughtful, brilliant, beautiful, hilarious, kind folks, many of which are going to be joining us in Vegas, March 22nd, 23rd. We'd love to have you there. Join us at the Pod Jam. Get tickets at the beginning of each program's show links. Email me with any questions. standupwithpete@gmail.com. Now on to your headlines from yesterday, which was a snow day. Lots of snow in the Northeast. I love it. Loved a big nor'easter, a surge of snow from this storm. Unclear how it impacted the voting in New York's special election, but that is the top news. A high-stakes special election in the 3rd Congressional District to fill the vacant seat of the disgraced former Congressman George Santos, who's now making a living making cameo videos, expelled over his ethics violations and more. Well, the results came in the 10 p.m. Eastern hour. Here's how Jake Tapper broke it on CNN.
We can now make an important projection. CNN projects that the Democrat, Tom Suozzi, the former member of the House, will win the special election in New York's 3rd Congressional District. The Democrats are picking up the House seat previously held by ousted Republican George Santos. Suozzi defeating his Republican opponent, Mazi Pilip, and now set to return to the House where he previously served. This is a big and critical victory for Democrats that shrinks the Republicans' already slim majority in the House. With Suozzi's win, Democrats will have 213 House seats compared to 219 for Republicans, with 3 seats as of right now remaining vacant. So it's a huge victory for Democrats. And let us go now and check in with our friend Miguel Marquez.
All right. Well, there you go. That's how it sounded when the news broke last night on CNN. We'll have more on that, I'm sure, tomorrow and the days ahead and what it means in unpacking the significance of that flipped district. And George Santos, thank you so much. The other big story yesterday was that last night House Republicans impeached the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas. The Senate, of course, is all but guaranteed to kill the matter. The reactions came immediately, and they were harsh. Tim O'Brien on social media says the House, after intentionally sabotaging a bipartisan bill meant to address the immigration crisis at the southern border, voted to impeach Mayorkas for, wait for it, failing to address the immigration crisis at the southern border. Craven rodeo clowns, he says. Dino Badala tweets, House Republicans impeached DHS Secretary Mayorkas for not securing the southern border, but just this week the House GOP blocked legislation that would spend $20 billion to secure the southern border. The House GOP want chaos at the expense of American lives. Joaquin Castro tweets, Republicans have no record of accomplishment to run on. Nothing on education, nothing on health care or the environment, nothing about creating jobs, nothing about keeping people safe. So they're putting on circuits. That's what impeaching Secretary Mayorkas is about. Brian Tyler Cohen, House Republicans have impeached Secretary of Homeland Security for not being tougher on the border after they refused to vote on the toughest border bill negotiation in the Senate in years. So, of course, they've now beclowned themselves again, impeaching Mayorkas on their second attempt by 1 vote less than 2 hours before the polls closed to replace infamous George Santos. All right, what else have I got for you? Yesterday, President Biden responded forcefully to Donald Trump's disgraced former president's comments over the weekend, where he said that he would encourage Russia to invade NATO allies if those countries did not spend enough money on defense. He delivered the remarks Tuesday to urge Congress to pass a $95 billion national security package to aid Israel, Ukraine, and other U.S. allies. Of course, the Senate passed that bill Tuesday morning, but House Speaker has already rejected the package. He was speaking from the White House. I'll bring you those comments later, but he said Trump's comments had sent a dangerous and shameful signal to the world, referring to the speech that he made in South Carolina, where he imagined a NATO country asking if the United States would protect them from a Russian attack if they didn't pay. And, well, you heard what he said. I'll play those comments for you. Let's go to some SCOTUS news. The Supreme Court on Tuesday gave Jack Smith, The special counsel prosecuting former President Donald Trump a week to respond to Mr. Trump's emergency application, asking the justices to halt an appeals court ruling that rejected his claim that he had absolutely immunity from criminal charges. The Center for Disease Control yesterday announced new guidelines considering loosening its recommendations regarding how long people should isolate after testing positive for COVID or coronavirus. Another reflection of changing attitudes and norms as the pandemic recedes. Is it receding? Stocks took a dive Tuesday, if you were paying attention, after some new information on inflation came out. A key inflation report revealed stubborn price increases, raising concerns on Wall Street that the Federal Reserve is going to keep rates higher for longer than anticipated. The Dow Jones Industrial Average slid 525 points or 1.4% Tuesday. Its largest single-day drop since March 2023. Don't worry, it'll be back. Apparently, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s campaign is in disarray, at least according to one media outlet, Mediaite, with an exclusive saying that there's an exodus of campaign workers who say the disorganization, lavish spending, amateurish leadership, and severe disconnect between the campaign and the candidates' values have led the long-shot bid for presidency astray. 14 members of his campaign have resigned since the start of the year. One source on the campaign pinned the turmoil on his campaign manager, who's his daughter-in-law, and an anti-vaccine activist who serves the campaign's communications director. So that's good news that his campaign is hopefully crumbling. Here's some actual good news. Jon Stewart, back at The Daily Show last night, just on Mondays, but he scored huge numbers for his return. The most watched episode of any Comedy Central show in 5 years. It brought 930,000 viewers, making it the most watched episode since 2018. Mixed reviews. I loved it. But some people didn't like that he seemingly made a false equivalency between the aging presidential candidates. I thought it was fine and good. I'm really happy to have John back. A couple of other quick stories. Police on Monday finally got the guy who, well, at least one of the guys, because apparently there's like 3 guys on video that destroyed the Jackie Robinson statue in Wichita, Kansas from McAdams Park, which is a youth baseball league called League 42, named, of course, after Jackie Robinson's legendary jersey number. The bronze statue was cut at the ankles from its base. Only the cleats remained. Days later, firefighters responded and found the burned remains of the statue, apparently. So a 45-year-old man was charged with felony theft, aggravated criminal damage to property, identity theft, making false information, taken into custody, and they may also be charging him with a hate-motivated crime because he was trying to sell the statue. And anyway, so that's good that they caught that guy because I was following that story. What a horrific thing. What an idiot. Hopefully they catch the other guys that were with him on the video. The CIA director, William Burns, has arrived in Cairo, Egypt for talks on hostage release deal, which would include a temporary ceasefire and better plan for getting aid into Gaza, apparently. We'll see what happens there with that, those negotiations. And those are your headlines for the last 24 hours. Let's get to some of those sound bites, clips, audio that I bring each and every day, hot and fresh for you. Let's start with the President, Joe Biden, yesterday at the White House reacting to the disgraced former president's comments inviting Russia just to do whatever the hell they want, reminding him and anybody who didn't know or ever forgot how NATO came to our side after 9/11. Here's the President yesterday. Sorry.
It's un-American. When America gives us word, it means something. When we make a commitment, we keep it. And NATO is a sacred commitment. Donald Trump looks at this as if it's a burden. When he looks at NATO, he doesn't see the alliance that protects America and the world. He sees a protection racket. He doesn't understand that NATO is built on fundamental principles of freedom, security, and national sovereignty. Because for Trump, principles never matter. Everything is transactional. He doesn't understand that the sacred commitment we've given works for us as well. In fact, I would remind Trump and all those who would walk away from NATO, Article 5 has only been invoked once, just once in our NATO history, and it was done to stand with America after we were attacked on 9/11. We should never forget it.
Meanwhile, over at the Hall of Villains, disgraced former President Donald Trump has chosen his daughter-in-law, his son's wife, to be the co-chair of the RNC, which is, of course, the definition of conflict of interest, if that were still a thing ever anymore in Trump world, but it never has been. He needs a loyalist, a family member in there. And she went on one of those right-wing, I think it's Newsmax, and basically said the entire goal of the RNC should be to get him elected. Weird, because I thought it was to get Republicans across the nation elected. Usually that's what the committee's responsibility and charter is, but no, here she is saying just that.
Here's what I can tell you. The RNC needs to be the leanest, most lethal political fighting machine we've ever seen in American history. That is the goal over the next 9.5 months. If I am elected to this position, I can assure you there will not be any more $70,000 or whatever exorbitant amount of money it was spent on flowers. Every single penny will go to the number one and the only job of the RNC. That is electing Donald J. Trump as president of the United States and saving this country.
All right, saving this country from your family. But now here is Trump's former consigliere, Michael Cohen, this dolt. But I like to listen to him. I hate his voice. I don't like him. I don't trust him. But I still want to play this clip because even if it's not true, it's just fun. Michael Cohen savaging Laura Trump and giving us a little behind the scenes on the relationship between her and her father-in-law.
Now, I got to be very clear on this. Laura's an idiot. And I don't say it to be mean. I say it because it's true. In fact, first and foremost, Donald didn't even like her for many, many years. He didn't want Eric to even marry her. He had found somebody else that was working at the Trump organization that he wanted Eric to marry. All right. That's to start. And of course, not only did Donald make fun of her looks, but so, of course, did Don and Ivanka. They all made fun of her looks. They just didn't like her at all. I was at a fundraiser at the Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C., when Donald finally told the story on what broke the ice between him and Laura Trump. This is a true story. You can't make this stuff up. Even if you tried, you couldn't make it up. He goes on to say that he's watching television and he sees this girl, this blonde, talking about him on television, and it caught his attention. And he's like, whoa, these are like beautiful things. These are incredible, beautiful things. And then he looked and he realized, oh my God, that's my daughter-in-law. That's Laura Trump. And from that moment on, as he called it, it was a love fest. This is a true story. I wish I could make this stuff up. I wish my imagination was that good. He couldn't stand her until she started kissing his ass. Well, what do you do when somebody's kissing your ass? Make them the, co-chair of the RNC. The real question that you have to ask yourself, how over her skis is she as it relates to being a co-chair for the RNC? I mean, how insane is that? That she doesn't even understand what the legitimate purpose is. She's only being installed there in order to do what Donald wants with all of the money that's going to be raised. Every dollar that you give to that RNC will somehow find its way into Von Shits and Pants' pocket.
Oh, my God, it's so great. He's so great. I love it. I could listen to that guy shit on Trump all day long, as dumb as he sounds. All right. Well, speaking of dumb, Nikki Haley, she is. I'm sorry. I mean, what she's done, she may not be dumb, but she certainly is on the wrong side of history, having worked for Trump and done what she's done and defended him in so many ways. And now, we're the twilight of her campaign, she's come out strong against Trump. Here she is, of course, on CNN, something she wasn't doing. A few weeks ago, she's talking to CNN's Dana Bash, savaging the disgraced former president she once worked proudly for.
Sounds like you are rethinking your pledge to support him if he's the nominee.
What I'm thinking is y'all need to ask him what he has to say about that, because he owes a lot of military families an explanation with that. He owes a lot of veterans an explanation on that. You don't disrespect someone who's done something that you weren't willing to do. He was not willing to go overseas, but supposedly because he had bone spurs. He's never been near a military uniform. He has no right to talk about anything that a service member does, because that's off limits with him when he wasn't willing to serve himself.
Well, as you heard yesterday, Margaret Brennan asked a similar question yesterday on Face the Nation, but she asked him, what about John McCain? Why didn't you say that when he savaged John McCain? And think about that a lot, by the way, that people heard him say that he likes people who aren't captured. Remember what he said about John McCain? And that they still voted for him. I always find that very, very, very deeply disturbing. All right, this is a weird but fun clip. This is the Super Bowl quarterback MVP Patrick Mahomes. He's at Disney World. He's in front of the Disney Magic Kingdom castle, and he's talking to Abby Phillips on CNN for some reason.
So you might be aware, or maybe not aware, there were some wild conspiracy theories that were flying around this season that the Taylor Swift fact was all scripted to allow Taylor to use the Super Bowl for politics, basically. So the president himself, President Biden, kind of got in on the joke a little there. What do you make of just how this has spiraled, not just to football, but to politics and all these different areas?
Yeah, it's been wild to see. I mean, I try to focus in on football as much as possible, but there's always some conspiracy theories out there. I just try to enjoy football with my family, and I kind of stay on social media as much as possible.
Yeah, that's... I would say that is wise. So,
all right. Well, that was fun. There you go. There's that. Here's a little more consequential interview. This is Khizr Khan. He's a Gold Star father who Donald Trump, remember, attacked back in 2016. He was also on CNN with Abby Phillips, and I want you to hear that.
I share with you the way Trump attacked us. As a family, we were worried. We received further threats to our safety and our well-being after we spoke at the National Convention, DNC Convention. We received a call later on in December of 2016, then Vice President Joe Biden, and he invited us to a gathering. And while at that gathering, he took us to, I'm giving you the comparison and the qualification of Commander-in-Chief. He took us to his study and showed us the photos of his family one at a time while placing his hands on our shoulders, comforting us and telling us that you're my family. I don't want you to be worried. I want you to be strong. Ghazala and I looked at each other and we could tell that our burden was lifted just because of empathy, element of empathy in our leaders, a very basic characteristics. Trump has no empathy for anyone except his own benefits. He's nothing but appetite and ego.
Wow, nailing him. Khizr Khan, father of Army Captain Hamayun Khan, who was killed during Operation Iraqi Freedom, telling it like it is. All right, how about one more CNN clip? This is Republican Congressman Ken Buck. He's from Colorado, and he was one of just 3 Republicans to vote against the impeachment resolution in what turned out to be this razor-thin vote yesterday, 214 to 213, by the way. And he blasted the impeachment of Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas moments after voting against it on Tuesday night on CNN.
And Congressman, last time we spoke, you voted against. You voted against now. Last time you said it would probably end up this way because they would go ahead with the votes once they got everyone in the room, and indeed they have. You stuck with your point of view, as did your peers Gallagher and McClintock. Did you reconsider your vote at all before tonight? Because you were receiving a lot of backlash. I would tune into Fox News occasionally. I would hear your name, always used in vain on this particular issue. Did you reconsider at all?
No. The reality is the facts didn't change, in my opinion of them. I prosecuted for 25 years. I know what a high crime and misdemeanor are, and I know that this doesn't qualify. This is a policy difference. You can try to put lipstick on this pig. It is still a pig, and this is a terrible impeachment. It sets a terrible precedent. The first impeachment of Donald Trump was a bad impeachment, and we've got to stop this in this body, or we are going to lose our credibility with further lose our credibility with the American public.
Yeah, too late for that, Ken Buck, including yourself. All right, well, I like to end the news segment with comedy. I know I played Jon Stewart last night, but I really am pretty psyched that he's back. And so in case you didn't hear the beginning, and I didn't actually hear the very opening of The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, here's a little bit of that.
Thank you. Welcome. Welcome to The Daily Show. My name is Jon Stewart. Now, where was I? I'm excited to be back. I'm very excited to be back. Good to see you guys. Good to see you guys. Why am I back? You may be asking yourselves. It's a very reasonable question. I have committed a lot of crimes. From what I understand, talk show hosts are granted immunity, so it doesn't make a lot of sense, but take it up with the founders. I don't know. We're going to have so much we're going to talk about this year. Obviously, elections. Maybe we'll talk about China. Maybe we'll talk about AI. Maybe something a little lighter, Israel-Palestine. Who knows? But first, the Super Bowl was yesterday. There's a gentleman in the crowd who's delighted that Kansas City won. It was really, sadly, a lose-lose for real America. Kansas City Chiefs are world champions, which means the decades-long plot in which Travis and Taylor brainwash America into getting routine vaccinations is complete. But it was really kind of a no-win for conservatives. I mean, if the Chiefs lost, who wins? The People's Communist Republic of Gay Pelosi-stan. It's almost like the right's ridiculous obsession with politicizing every aspect of American life ruins everything. But now that it's over, 9 months till the election, people!
Well, there you go. And 9 months of Jon Stewart on Monday nights on Comedy Central's The Daily Show. So happy to have him back and looking forward to have something to watch on Mondays. All right. Well, you've got something to listen to each and every day right here on the Stand Up with Pete Dominic podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in today. That is the news. And now it's time to get to my guest, which is the format of everyday's show. So joining me now is a guy who I've known for a real long time. I love him very much, personally and professionally and in all of the ways, well, most of the ways. He's a very happily married man with 3 young kids, and he is a writer, he is a lawyer, he is a playwright, he is an activist, he is a journalist, he is a TED Talker. He is a podcaster. Listen to Democracy-ish with our friend DAnielle Moodie, who I've really got to get back on the show. Get his book, Go Back to Where You Came From, and other helpful recommendations on how to become American. Now out on paperback. Read him at the Daily Beast. Follow him on social media. And soon, maybe we'll be doing our own podcast together. We will see. It's coming together. We've been talking about it. We tease it at the end of this conversation. So stay and be a bumblebee. It's just the people who listen to the entire show. You know who you are. The conversation begins right after I suggested I was going to infiltrate a white supremacist gang or militia. Let's do it right now with Waj. I really need to get out there. I'm thinking of infiltrating a white supremacist militia based on partially the characteristics that you just attributed to me, that I look like one. But also I think I'm a good actor. I'm convincing, and I want to do my part. I want to take them down. You have to lead with one really racist insult. So you have to pick a group that you hit to make them believe. Are you going to hit the Jews, the Mexicans? Pakistani? I think Pakistani is good. It's unique enough that they'll probably think there was something deeply personal that happened to you, right? Because most people lead with black or Jew, and you're like, I hate these goddamn Pakistanis. They're like, that's pure. Here's the issue. A lot of this stuff truly does start with you hate a person, and then you hurt them because of their ethnicity or some other perceived weakness. They're overweight, whatever. Like, for me to get into the militia, they're going to know, they're going to be able to find out who I am. I'm a public guy. I've been on TV and stuff. And so the narrative I'm saying is that I was such good friends with this Pakistani guy who I really adored, and we were supposed to do a podcast together, and then I didn't hear from him. So I have come to join. I'm so jaded because of you. Like, you should say that. You should say, I got lured into the fantasy of a multiracial America, and then a Pakistani spurned my heart, and I realized the white man is under threat. And then they'd be like, join the tribe, brother. We've all been there. Yeah. I dated a Latina once, and she didn't bring me home to
her family because I couldn't speak Espagnoli.
When I was little, I was best friends with a black boy, but then he replaced me with another white. What?
And look, and I was the better white. I even gave him my crackers. A white man giving a black man crackers. I indulged the stereotype. And it wasn't enough. It's all personal, man. That's the funny thing. Yeah. All these people get radicalized. Like, did you read this hilarious and disturbing Bill Ackman profile that was done by New York Magazine?
I read just one excerpt, which I am guessing is the most embarrassing moment, where he talks about apparently thinking that you're born into a certain identity and something to do with your name, and then he quizzes the reporter and tries to create what that means.
And then he said, my name is Ackman, like activist man.
Right. And he was...
That's almost an exact quote, folks. These are the people that rule over us. This is the brain of a billionaire.
He's a billionaire. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, but the thing is, speaking about the personal aspect that radicalizes, his main grievance is that his daughter went to Harvard and kind of turned out quasi-socialist and anti-capitalist and like basically against his worldview. And he's done. He's done with DEI and wokeness. And then with Elon, one of his...
And Elon, one of his kids is trans.
There you go.
It's so easy to analyze. You see it all the time. I'm seeing it play out in my town as well. It's so often the parent of a child who's either showing signs of, femininity, a boy, or flamboyance, or quote gayness, and the parent lashes out, or something like that, or the person lashes out at themselves. But let me ask you about this shooting in Texas at Joel Osteen's church. And if the woman's own child didn't get shot in the head, we could start to make jokes about the irony of it all and just the horror of it all. But this person had a sticker or something on the gun that said Palestine. And then they're saying maybe her ex was Jewish, and they're trying to explain what might be a motive here for why she did it. Because sometimes these shooters have real motives, and maybe there was. But the truth is, when you quickly found out about this person's history, serious mental health issues, schizophrenia issues, previous firearm issues, apparently, child protection services calls, and none of those 500 red flags prevented that woman. And even if she is mad about the Middle East, or even if she does hate the Jews, people are angry. People hate people. Let's stop them from getting guns somehow, some way, but not in Texas and not in a lot of other states in America.
Texas, open carry state, which has loosened gun restrictions, and now apparently you don't even need a permit, and younger people can get guns. What could go wrong? And even with these loosened restrictions, police officers have said, hey, this makes us less safe. And you've seen a rise in suicide and domestic violence in Texas and in Missouri and all these places. But hey, it's okay, because even though the number one killer of kids in America is gun violence, folks, just let that sink in. We still have more guns than people. And, we all politicize this. Actually, I'll take it back. Not all of us politicize it. We should politicize it because you want to have gun control. But another scary aspect of this is Libs of TikTok, which is run by hate monger Chaya Raichik. I'm forgetting her name, but whatever. It's a group that really has targeted LGBTQ communities and inspired hate and also violent threats against them. That account, which is now followed by mainstream Republicans, said that the shooter was trans, and then all of a sudden that became like the leading topic, even though the shooter now is revealed not to be trans. But all of a sudden, transgender panic. And I'm sitting there thinking, the overwhelming majority of shooters in America are white men. The number one domestic terror threat in America is white domestic terrorism and white supremacist violence.
They're saying it's a mental illness, that trans is a mental illness, and that's why, what's the question? So that person, should not be allowed to have a gun? All right, well, let's find a place of agreement. Like, there's plenty of other issues around, even if she was ever identified as a woman, apparently, for like 5 seconds, she used a different name, whatever. It's confusing. It doesn't matter.
Exactly. The main thing is the guns. The main thing is, why does that person have an access to guns, like you said, who has a huge history of red flags, mental illness, criminal activity? That person, probably in the United States of America, should be thoroughly vetted before getting a gun. But we see time and time again that in these red states in particular, it's all about saving the baby in the womb But as soon as the baby comes out, lace up your shoes and run and learn to dodge bullets. Learn to dodge bullets, baby. And, or baby, hey, baby, maybe you should carry a gun and shoot back. Or maybe we need more doors in schools.
I think both the last two solutions are pragmatic.
I was
give the baby
I was reading that
doors.
It's like February 14th. We've had, I think this was the 48th mass shooting, which means there are more mass shootings than days in the new year. This is America, Pete. And, I sit there as your kids are a little bit older, but still they're kids. They're going to college, right? I got kids going to school and, they have guns. Like we had fire drills, man. I never had a gun safety drill. Like gun safety drills are the norm now. That's like no one flinches. They're like, oh yeah, gun drill. They're like, what?
Well, they flinch a lot. I mean, the truth is it creates constant anxiety in the children. It obviously creates thoughts about its rationality or realistic possibility if their students, if the grown adults are warning this could happen to the point they're training us, then I guess in my child brain, it's as possible as a fire because we alarm for those as well. We train for those as well. And so, that's terrifying. It's terrifying. It's just, as you said, that's America, but that's also an answer. There are answers. There are rules and laws that you could put up so that some people wouldn't get guns and people.
But it's easier if the shooter is trans, if the shooter is Mexican, if the shooter is black, if the shooter is Muslim, then you crack down. But overwhelmingly, when we see the rise of right-wing white nationalist violence, or what we saw, what was it, last week? It was like a story which just died in a day, like this guy who got radicalized by right-wing media about the quote-unquote invasion at the border, tried to work with militia members to kill federal law enforcement and immigrants, and he got caught. Meh. That's a patriot.
If you were going to throw up all of these mass shooters' faces on a screen as part of a game show and then decide based on whatever identities they had, it could almost be funny because it would just be a whole bunch of crazy white guys, angry white guys, and then very few people of color in like that lady in Texas and a trans kid.
Yeah. Well, is she trans? Did they finalize that?
I don't think so. There's like one report that said she used another name at one point. That's enough for the people who want to idolize her. And, but I mean, who amongst us hasn't gone by a different lady's name from time to time for a year? But the point being, there aren't very many. Like, if that's the argument, then obviously the vast majority of those types of shootings are angry white kids, lost white boys, basically. I mean, always.
And the interesting thing is, I saw a really fascinating data point that came out a couple of weeks ago that said as women, especially young women, are becoming more progressive, and this is not just in America, across the globe, guess who's going more conservative? Like literally in the opposite direction. Young men. And the alt-right and the right wing, their number one recruiting pool is young, aggrieved men.
Sure.
And
there's all those podcasts that make, and there's all these different channels to tell them how they've been victimized and why they need to grow a pair. There's $1 billion. We should do that podcast. Yeah, ice baths and fight each other and breathing exercises and eat. We should kill animals.
Yeah, Grow a Pair. That's the podcast. Grow a Pair, starring Pete Dominic and Wajahat Ali living in the suburbs. Grow a Pair. In today's episode, we kill a grasshopper and then eat it without seasoning.
That sounds. I feel like that makes us look like meek. Why aren't we killing a beast?
You have to go kill something. You have to go kill something that leaves wounds. But you know what I've noticed though? And this is why you're a balanced person, and you and others are stable. But I have seen the allure of this. Like, if you ever saw the movie Magnolia, Tom Cruise plays this character who is an object of ridicule ultimately, but he's a con man, I think by the name of Frank Mackey, who sells this alpha male promotional misogyny, like respect the cock, be a man. And you sit there watching that movie. I think it came out in 1999, and everyone kind of laughs at that character. But now that character if he was alive in 2024, he would have like a leading YouTube channel. He'd have his own like book.
That's
deal.
weird.
You know, he'd be a UFC commentator. He'd make tons of money.
What do you think the appeal is to those types of programs and personalities?
I think as men feel left behind, as they feel less educated, as they feel like, as they feel disconnected from community, from purpose, in comes a narrative that gives them power. It gives them a place. It gives them a hierarchy. It gives them dominance, and it gives them an easy enemy. It says you should be at the top of the food chain if it were not for these insidious forces of XYZ, oftentimes feminism, be a man, don't apologize, indulge in your vices, restraint, moderation, kindness is seen as weakness, indulge in your id. But ultimately, man, it's just toxic and destructive and self-destructive. But I can see the appeal.
Are you familiar with it? We talked about Richard Reeves and his work. He was at Brookings. Now he's doing his own thing. But he wrote a book called Of Boys and Men, Why the Modern Male is Struggling, Why It Matters, and What to Do About it. Are you familiar with him?
I'm familiar with it, but I haven't read it.
Shit, man. I want you to read that book and interview him for this podcast.
Oh, interesting. Have you read it?
Yeah, I've read a lot of it, and I listened to all the interviews, and then I was scheduled to interview him, and I had a technical issue. It was like the worst thing had ever happened in doing the podcast. Like I've never had that happen.
It was the feminists. The feminists came.
I think a feminist squirrel chewed through the line going out to the shed. But it's really not too controversial. I heard Liz Plank, who's a well-known feminist, interview him, and like he really turned her around on some of her concerns about what it meant for girls and women, this kind of thesis. It's a really interesting and I think vitally important issue to what we're talking about, why the modern male is struggling, why it matters, and what to do about it, because you and I are struggling. We've talked about it. And, you just tweeted about this story, why we're more exhausted than ever. You are a middle-aged man with 3 young children. That alone is a tremendous amount. And you're doing so many other things as well. What do you want to say about the exhaustion factor and how you cope with it?
Yeah, man. Look, you have 2 daughters. I have a son and 2 daughters. So for many of us, especially as we're middle-aged dads, I think
doesn't require very little though. Now, just to be clear, like I'm begging them for me to do. Can I make you something? So your kids are little and you have a lot of responsibilities.
Yes. So right now they need me for survival. So I have some use. You're at that stage where like, shut up, Dad. Go away, Dad. Yes. You're like, are you still here? Are you still alive?
Yeah, I yelled at my daughter yesterday that I'm verified on Instagram. Nothing. She just slammed the door.
She goes, why do old people smell? You're like, I'm wearing Old Spice. That's disgusting.
I do.
I do too. That's a middle-aged dad, Old Spice. We graduate from Axe to Old Spice. I do think, what it is there was like a lament of several people, regardless of ethnicity, just our age, like what we're missing, right? I remember, I grew up with 3 generations. I grew up with my grandparents, my parents, and me. We had uncles, we had aunts, we had community, we had connection. And what that did was, in addition to just modeling behavior and relationships and having parental guidance and prayers, you just had elders around. And you could also outsource work. My mom and dad had to go to work. They knew like my grandparents were there. They loved me, right? And so back in those days, believe it or not, children, I heard a rumor in the 50s and 60s, if you actually had only one breadwinner, it might have been enough to have a middle-class family. But then Reaganomics comes, and now, my wife and I were talking about this, and we're like, we're doing better than most people, but like both of us have to work, man, to make ends meet. If like one of us, God forbid, does not bring in an income, it's over. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. So that's us, and we're doing pretty okay. Now imagine people who are single parents. Divorced families, people just struggling to get by, middle class, without connection, without family, without community. How do you get by? And I think you're spiritually exhausted, you're mentally exhausted, you're physically exhausted, you're financially exhausted. And then American culture, as you know, always says, do more, bucket list, do more. You can like maximize your day. Here's a checklist, do this, and you shall get the magic Willy Wonka ticket. And so you add all of that plus Instagram and plus TikTok where everyone's living their best life. And like you probably end up sleeping every day exhausted and feeling like shit.
Well done. Yeah. There's just so much coming at us all the time and so much pressure to try to get it done. And no matter who it's, I just hear that from so many people all the time from listeners. And I read all these articles about it and feel seen to a certain extent. Although I will say for myself, I'm starting to find a better work-life balance, but I feel a really hard time with the idea of slowing down much or taking even days off. So I guess I'm the worst. Anyway.
No, but also, you know, American workers leave more vacation days on the table, meaning they don't use them, than any other worker in an industrialized country. And even though, as we talked about on your show before, profitability has gone up, productivity has gone up, but wages have not. And so there is an aspect of like just abusive capitalism that allows the Ackmans to become billionaires and like the average Jose's and Janes to just slog away, in addition to everything that we mentioned. And I think the lack of community. And I think the fact that, like, you know, there's just not enough, like, forget about, like, you need two parents, you need this, you need that. I'm not making a judgment call, but just division of labor, man. Like, you know how it goes. Like, division of labor in itself is enough. Like, if you have two people there and one of them, say, back in the day, right? Like, you think about the 50s and 60s, why people thought it was like the golden ages, because imagine if you had that traditional role. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but like one breadwinner, whoever that is. But anyone who's a homemaker, that's tough work. If it's the woman or the man, respect. Staying at home all day with 2 or 3 kids, and like that is a nonstop job. But it's also a division of labor, right? And there's connectivity. But in the absence of that, and you're always running around, and then especially if you're a parent, right? Am I doing enough? Am I spending enough time? Am I making enough money? Career, work, life balance, which is why I think a lot of women called bullshit on Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In. They're like, I'm just trying to prop myself up to survive. like, what am I leaning into? I'm leaning into dying.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, you know, listen, some of it, it's certainly true. That whole
It's easy criticism. To lean in when you're Sheryl Sandberg working at Facebook, bro.
Yeah, well, that's one way of looking at it as well, for sure. You know, it really is. Also, to the point, a lot of people don't get vacation days. You know, that you're self-employed, or you work at a place where you don't. If you don't work, you don't get paid, and that makes it hard to do a whole bunch of things as well.
You and me eat while we hunt, man.
Yeah, for sure. And I was thinking of myself and a lot of self-employed people out there. All right. Want to ask you about the Middle East.
Of course.
Hard pivot. You've been tweeting, talking, thinking a lot about what's happened there lately, how the Biden administration has handled it, how media has covered it. And it does seem, in my own personal impression, media filter, in the Pete Dominic, what I'm taking in, that there seems to be a turn of light criticism towards Israel by the president. Last night I heard Chris Van Halen, a U.S. senator, accuse Israel and Israelis leaders of war crimes. I don't think I've ever heard wild. That. And so public opinion has been against Israel from the start of the revenge to the terrorist attack. But it seems to be that, like, some of the rhetoric and media is changing a little bit more, even more now. I don't know. That's just a broad generalization of my opinion and how I'm seeing it. What are you seeing?
I don't think you're wrong. I mean, the fact that you heard that overt criticism from a U.S. senator, in addition to some elected officials who have been consistently criticizing Israel for collective punishment, calling for a ceasefire, is now no longer, a third rail. The fact that Joe Biden came out with the King of Jordan yesterday and lightly critiqued Netanyahu and Israel for too much. You never heard that before. The fact that we heard reports from behind the scenes that Biden is furious at Netanyahu. The fact that you see the numbers, right? Like 11,500 dead kids, 30,000, total dead Palestinians, most of them civilians, the attack on Rafah, the fact that, Biden is like, I believe in a 2-state solution. The next day, Netanyahu goes, nope, there'll never be a 2-state solution. And then you see the poll numbers, right? Like a third of Americans, this was about last week, third of Americans call it a genocide, a third don't, and a third are on the fence, and a majority want a ceasefire. And so I always thought this, I said this, I think, on your show several months ago. Israel's response, especially with this extremist right-wing government, the most extreme in Israel's history, which is populated by literally extremists such as Ben Gvir, the national security minister, who was indicted for terrorism, and, Smotrich, the financial minister, who refers to himself as a proud fascist homophobe. Like, these are the people in the government, right? I feel like Americans, seeing the barbarity, seeing that rhetoric, I think the tide is slightly turning. I think people are like, why are we sending weapons to this? Why are we sending guns, and why are we bypassing Congress, and why are we engendering the anger of the world? And after all this, Pete, as of today, our Congress sent billions of dollars in aid to Israel. So that's the frustrating part. It's like, we're really upset at Netanyahu. Here's billions of dollars to continue the war.
Oh, they sent fewer billions, but still billions to Palestinian relief and so on. Is what I said on the podcast. I read this yesterday. I don't know if the bill
10 billion or 11 billion, right?
I haven't paid attention to the news or that bill, but the way I saw it, regardless if Israel got 13 billion and the Palestinians got 10, it's like you're paying them to kick the shit out of each other. Like, it's just a vicious cycle. And I'm simplifying it. Obviously, the foreign aid, I think, obviously is, we could talk about where it goes.
What I've always said is, look, if there's a reason why even in Israel, it's important for people to know, before the war, Netanyahu was deeply unpopular. There were protests against the Netanyahu government, wanting him to get out and resign. 72 to 75% of the country was against him. Yeah. And now even the family members of the hostages who haven't been freed realize what many of us have been saying, is that Netanyahu does not care about the hostages, because with those poll numbers, he needs the war to continue. As long as the war continues, he gets to stay in power. And so people are like, okay, you attacked Rafah and you killed all these Palestinians and you got 2 hostages back. Okay. When there was a temporary ceasefire, you got 24 hostages back. So what are you doing for the hostages? And the reality is he doesn't care about the hostages, and absent an end to the occupation, even if you destroy Hamas, which I think 4 months in now, Pete, it's pretty clear that they're not going to destroy Hamas. There's going to be a new Hamas, Pete. Like, this is what happened in the early 80s when they attacked Lebanon and they weakened PLO. What happened? The rise of Hezbollah. People resist occupation. And I've gone there 3 times, and you talk to most Palestinians, this is what they want. They just want to breathe. They just want freedom. They just want normalcy. And so you need, in a perfect world, the Netanyahu government will go, Hamas will go. There will be a pathway towards some form of self-determination for the Palestinian people. Occupied people have always resisted occupation, Pete. And I'll tell you this, knowing Palestinian people, talking to them, even if you kick them out to Egypt, which is what they're saying, what Israel wants to do, they'll never forget, Pete. They'll never forget. They'll always want to come back to Palestine and their homeland, which reminds me of Jews before the creation of Israel, right? Like, Herzl said, I got you Uganda. And they're like, who the F cares about Uganda? We want Jerusalem.
I got you. You guys can go to Uganda. No, we want to stay at our house.
Yeah, they're like, no. He goes, no, but there's anti-Semitism. Look at Russia. Look at the pogroms. They're like, I got you Uganda. We can go there. We can build, we could be free. And they're like, Uganda? We don't pray for Uganda. Jerusalem, no matter how long it takes. And that's one thing that I think people need to realize about Palestinians. And my Jewish friend said this. He went with me. We did the film for The Atlantic. And he said on his own, wow, the Palestinians remind me of the Jews in exile. They'll always yearn for freedom and the homeland. They'll never forget. And they're right now in the position of being without power, and the Jews in Israel have the power. But my fear is that they're abusing the power for the sake of land, and you're giving up so much morality, ethics, values, Judaism, everything.
So much more to talk with you about, as always. I'll let you go with a lighter yet still divisive issue. Except for now, I don't think so. Jason Kelce, the football player, he yelled at his coach.
That was Travis Kelce.
Travis Kelce yelled at the coach during the Super Bowl, and everybody saw it. He really yelled at him, and he kind of pushed him.
Put me in the game. He get Ron in his face, pushed him.
Did he say, put me in the game?
I think so. He goes, put me in, come on. And then it was Andy Reid got caught off guard because he was focusing on the field. And
he startled him.
Yeah, got right in his face. And it was one of those situations where I thought it was the only one. I'm like, that's a little excessive. But then I went online, and everyone was like, yo, that was a black player. Bro.
That's what I was thinking too. I was thinking that, but I was also thinking, but even regardless of if it were a black player, like it became divisive on I think a lot of people interpreted. I was sitting there with my daughter My daughter said, I don't like that at all.
Oh, good. Yeah, I didn't either.
I was like, yeah, nobody likes to see someone get yelled at. I understand it brings up issues for yourself, but like, yeah, it's the middle of a football game, and these men a lot of them have to stay in that kind of zone of rage to go hit another man, to do what they have to do, because it's ridiculous what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I was just like, he just wants to win the game. And Andy Reid knows that. And if Andy Reid and him are cool, totally cool, then the rest of us need to realize that he's not yelling at you.
Well, I think it's both things, right? Both things is probably Andy Reid knows him. He knows that there's a mutual respect. He probably knows he's fired up. He probably knows that's
calm down, Travis. Jesus Christ. I'm just thinking about a burger.
Yeah, he goes, let me just sit here and think about the money I make from the ads, the State Farm ads. But yeah, it was just kind of an ugly look. And the reason why the racial component comes in is that if it were a black man doing that, like literally in his face, startling him, it would have been the topic of discussion for the next day. That's the truth. Mental health issues. Look at these. Oh, blah. But Travis did it. He's dating Taylor Swift, and we're like, he's competitive.
I think everybody honestly pictured him yelling at Taylor Swift like that. I think that's what they saw. I do. I think they saw him yelling at themselves because nobody likes to get yelled at. Julia probably saw me. Like, that's what you look like when you get mad. Like, oh God, I've traumatized my child. If I've yelled at her, it's terrifying to be yelled at. And I think they see that and they just take it out of context and internalize it. Like,
that was all. I mean, I'm sure, look, they respect each other, but it was a bad look. And also that there's a hilarious tweet that someone did where there's a small clip of Travis Kelce holding up the trophy, like yelling, "You gotta fight for your right to party." And there's just a cut look to Taylor Swift looking away. And the guy who did the tweet, he was like, "This is Taylor thinking about, oh my God, our children won't be able to read."
Listen, I appreciate your interpretation on that and everything else. I wanted to talk about that with someone.
And I haven't forgotten about the pod. Me and Dave, Pete and I have a really sweet idea for a taste in you pod that hopefully we will share with you soon.
Yes, can't wait. I'm glad that you made it public because it'll tease it out a little bit, and then now we're both held accountable for following through.
Let us know if you want to listen to it. What happens if people what happens if someone says no?
They won't. As a matter of fact, I told my buddy Campbell in Australia, my best friend and husband, who's a big fan of yours. He always loves when he comes on. It's the kind of people say, I never miss an episode when Waj is there. And I told him that we were thinking about doing something. And then he's like, what? He kept asking, what's going on? What's going on? And I was like, we haven't talked. And then he goes, today's the day you reach out to Waj. Like, that's how bad he wants it. He wants to Waj.
The idea?
Yeah.
Oh, he liked it. Oh, that's good, man.
Thinks it's the best idea that I've been affiliated with in a while.
Oh, that's sweet, man. All right. I was traveling. I got back. It's on I wrote it on my to-do list, so I haven't forgotten. No
worries, bud.
But we'll get it done.
There you go. Wajahat Ali, everybody. How about it? Coming soon, hopefully a podcast from the two of us, a weekly podcast. Maybe a little bit about being middle-aged men, dads, and all that comes with it. We'll see. Hopefully coming soon. All right, that's it. I'm out of time, and I thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. And every day that you do, tell your friends, write a review on Spotify and iTunes, and go to patreon.com/PDominic if you haven't already and sign up. You can always decide to pay more if you've got more. If you're getting a lot out of the show, that always makes a huge difference. So go now, patreon.com/PDominic. Write those reviews. John Carroll is our friend, and we are so lucky that he wrote this theme song for us. Take us away, brother. We'll talk to you tomorrow, where my guest will be veteran and writer Matt Gallagher, talking about his new novel set in modern-day Ukraine war. Amazing guy, amazing book, great conversation. Bring it to you tomorrow. Now buzz away and go find joy, my bumblebee friends.
Rise up, you got to stand up, you got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence, and even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for loss, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it than now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well, and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.